Most people think July's heat means it's too late to start anything new in a container. The soil dries out too fast, the sun is too harsh, and anything you plant now is just going to struggle. It sounds logical, but surprisingly, July turns out to be one of the best planting months of the entire year. The warmer soil means faster germination and quicker growth than spring plantings ever deliver, and a container turns out to be one of the best places to take advantage of it. That's because containers give gardeners something the ground often cannot: control. Better drainage, faster warming soil, easier pest management, and the ability to move plants exactly where they need to be when the sun gets brutal. That combination is exactly why this month rewards gardeners who keep going instead of stopping. In today's video, we're going through 15 July vegetables that grow healthier, cleaner, and more productively in containers. Stay with us because number 14 is so vigorous that a single plant can cover an entire container or trellis on its own, and once established, it will even reseed itself. So, let's get started. Number 1. Zucchini. If there's one vegetable everyone assumes belongs in a sprawling garden bed, it's this one. But zucchini adapts beautifully to a container, and July is nowhere near too late to start it. If your spring zucchini has already slowed down, gotten diseased, or stopped producing altogether, a fresh planting right now sprouts in under a week in this warm soil and takes over the moment the first round starts fading. In most zones, that gives a July-planted zucchini plenty of time to produce a full harvest well before the first frost. For your container, go with at least a 5-gallon pot with drainage holes, since standing water rots the roots fast. Fill it with a light, well-draining potting mix instead of garden soil, which compacts and smothers roots once it's packed into a pot. Once the July heat really sets in, expect to be watering almost daily whenever the top inch of soil feels dry. Now, the 3 problems every zucchini grower eventually runs into, and exactly how to beat each one. If you spot white powdery patches spreading across the leaves, that's powdery mildew, and it takes hold fastest when leaves stay damp and crowded. So water at the base instead of overhead. Give the plant room to breathe and pull off the worst leaves the moment you see them. If a plant that looked perfectly healthy the night before turns up completely wilted by morning, a squash vine borer has almost certainly tunneled into the stem, and by that point there's little you can do, which is why wrapping the base of the stem in foil or fabric before it ever shows up is the one move that actually works. And if the plant keeps flowering but never sets any fruit, pollination is failing, usually because there simply aren't enough bees visiting. So take a small paintbrush, pull pollen from the male flower, and dust it directly onto the female flower yourself. Stay ahead of those 3, and one zucchini plant will keep filling your kitchen counter for months. Number 2. Cucumbers. At number 2, bush cucumbers. A crop that turns out to be almost perfectly built for a July container. Most gardeners assume cucumbers need a full garden bed and a long trellis to be worth growing, but the bush variety was bred to do the opposite: stay compact, skip the sprawl, and produce just as heavily from a single pot. That makes July the ideal moment to start one, because the soil in a container is already warm enough to sprout the seed in 3 to 5 days, something that would take nearly 2 weeks in cooler spring ground. There's another advantage hiding in this timing. Cucumber beetles, the pest that damages so many spring-planted vines, complete their early season cycle before midsummer arrives, so a cucumber started now grows up with far less pressure from them. For your container, a 5-gallon pot with drainage holes is plenty. No trellis required, though a small stake helps keep the plant upright once it's loaded with fruit. Fill it with a light potting mix rather than garden soil, which compacts fast in a pot and starves the roots. July heat pulls moisture out of a container quickly, so check the soil daily and water whenever the top inch turns dry, since inconsistent watering is the single biggest reason container cucumbers turn bitter. Feed the plant every couple of weeks too, since containers flush out nutrients far faster than garden beds ever do. Stay on top of both, and a single bush cucumber plant will keep a steady, crisp harvest coming for weeks. Number 3. Green beans. At number 3, green beans, one of the most forgiving crops you can put in a container this month. Most gardeners only plant beans once in spring and assume that's their one shot for the year. But beans planted in July often turn out sweeter and more tender than anything picked in the middle of summer's heat. The warm soil in a container speeds germination dramatically. Seeds that would take almost 2 weeks to emerge in spring push through in 8 to 10 days right now. There is one hard rule with this one though. Beans take no cold at all, so this is a crop with a real deadline. Get them into the container in the first half of July so they have enough time to mature and produce before the first frost of fall arrives in your area. For your container, a pot around 12 inches deep and just as wide comfortably holds a small cluster of bush bean plants. The biggest risk right after planting is the seed drying out before it even sprouts. July sun bakes the top inch of soil within hours, and a bean seed that dries out mid-germination simply won't come up. Keep that soil consistently moist for the first week. A light layer of straw or mulch on top helps enormously. Once the plants are established, pick the pods every 2 to 3 days rather than letting them sit, since the more you harvest, the more the plant keeps producing, right up until frost finally ends the season. Number 4. Basil. If there's one plant that seems custom-built for a July container, it's basil. Basil hates sitting in cool, damp soil, exactly the kind of conditions a spring garden bed often has. But a container in full July sun gives it precisely what it wants: warm roots and fast drainage. That combination is why basil planted right now often outgrows and outproduces anything started back in April. For container, an 8 to 10 inch pot is plenty for a single plant, placed in the sunniest spot you have. Fill it with a well-draining potting mix, since basil sitting in soggy soil is far more likely to develop root problems than one that dries slightly between waterings. If a plant that looked completely fine suddenly turns brown or black and collapses within a day or two, root rot from overwatering is almost always the cause. So let the top inch of soil dry out before watering again, and make sure the pot actually drains rather than holding water at the bottom. The single habit that makes the biggest difference here is pinching. Every few days, snip off the top 2 sets of leaves, rather than waiting to harvest a large amount at once. That small bit of pruning stops the plant from shooting straight up and instead pushes it to branch out low and wide, which means far more leaves overall by the end of summer. Left unpruned, basil eventually sends up a flower spike, and once that happens, the leaves turn bitter fast. So pinch off any flower buds the moment you spot them. Stay ahead of both, and a single basil plant will keep a steady supply of fresh leaves coming for months. Number 5. Green onions. Few crops are as planted and forget it as green onions. Most people don't realize they're barely bothered by July's heat at all, and a container gives them exactly the kind of shallow, loose soil their thin roots prefer, something a compacted garden bed rarely offers. For your container, a shallow pot or rectangular window box just 6 to 8 inches deep is plenty, since they have small, compact root systems. That shallow depth also means you can pack them in tightly, seeds or sets spaced just an inch or 2 apart, and still get a full productive harvest from a surprisingly small footprint. Fill it with a light potting mix and set it wherever it gets at least 4 to 6 hours of sun a day. Here's what makes this crop genuinely different from almost everything else on this list. You don't have to pull the whole plant to harvest it. Simply snip the green tops down to about an inch above the soil, and the base regrows a fresh batch in 10 to 14 days. That means a single July planting can keep producing green onions in the same container for months, well past summer, and often right into fall. Keep the soil lightly moist since it dries out fast in a shallow pot, and resist the urge to yank plants out by the root when all you actually need is a quick snip at the top. Number 6. Radishes. Our next container vegetable that you can grow in July is radishes, one of the fastest crops you'll ever pull from a pot. Sow them now, and you could be eating them in as little as 3 weeks. For your container, a pot 6 to 8 inches deep is all radishes need, since their roots stay short and shallow. That means you can sow them thickly, an inch or two apart, and still get a full harvest from a single small pot. Set it somewhere it gets at least 4 to 6 hours of sun. July heat does bring one real risk here. Radishes are a cool season crop at heart, and if the soil dries out even once while the roots are forming, they turn woody, pithy, and sharper than they should be. Keep the container consistently moist from the day you sow until harvest, checking daily since a shallow pot dries out fast in summer heat. Don't sow the whole packet at once either, or every radish matures the same week and turns tough before you can eat through them. A small pinch of seed every 7 to 10 days keeps a steady supply coming, and pulling each radish the moment it reaches full size, rather than leaving it in the soil, is what keeps the texture crisp instead of woody. Number 7. Summer squash. Our next vegetable is yellow summer squash, which you can still plant right now, and actually this is the best time all year to start it. Squash planted now sprouts fast in this warm soil, and in most zones still has plenty of time to produce a full harvest before the first frost. The squash vine borer moth, the pest responsible for so many squash plants dying overnight, lays most of its eggs earlier in the season, so a plant started in July often grows up with far less pressure from it. For your container, a pot at least 5 gallons and a good 12 to 15 inches deep gives the roots enough room to support a full season of fruit. Fill it with a light, well-draining potting mix and set it somewhere it gets a full 6 or more hours of direct sun. July heat pulls water out of a container fast, and squash is especially sensitive to it. Inconsistent watering is usually behind fruit that rots at the blossom end or plants that stall out completely. Water deeply whenever the top inch of soil dries, and pick the squash while it's still small, since letting it grow oversized on the vine tells the plant to stop producing more. Number 8. Bush beans. Our next vegetable is bush beans, and if space is tight, this is the bean that solves it. Unlike a sprawling vine that needs a trellis, bush beans stay short and self-supporting, which means a single compact pot can hold 3 or 4 plants at once, instead of just one. For container gardening, a pot around 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide comfortably fits that small cluster, no staking or support structure needed at all. Fill it with a light potting mix, since garden soil compacts fast in a pot and holds too much water around the roots. Set it somewhere it gets a full 6 to 8 hours of direct sun. Here's what makes bush beans especially useful in July. Rather than one single planting, sow a fresh small pot every 2 to 3 weeks through the rest of the month. Because bush beans mature all at once and then taper off, this kind of rolling, staggered planting keeps a steady supply of fresh beans coming all the way into fall, instead of one big harvest followed by nothing. Pick the pods every 2 to 3 days once they start forming, and this small footprint will keep quietly feeding you for weeks. Number 9. Edamame. Edamame might be the one crop on this list with an actual deadline attached to it. It takes 75 to 100 days to mature, so if you're planting it now, aim for the first half of July rather than waiting until the month is nearly over. That gives it just enough runway to fill out its pods before the first fall frost shuts things down. For your container, a pot at least 12 inches deep and wide gives the roots room to support a full, bushy plant, and no staking is needed since edamame stays sturdy and upright on its own. Fill it with a light potting mix and set it somewhere it gets a full 6 to 8 hours of direct sun, since edamame genuinely loves heat far more than most beans. If your plant is growing well but the pods never seem to fill out or show up at all, it usually comes down to inconsistent watering right around flowering. Edamame is far less forgiving of a dried-out container at that stage than bush beans are. Keep the soil evenly moist through flowering and pod development, and the good news is edamame's flowers pollinate themselves, so there's no hand pollinating to worry about here. Harvest once the pods turn bright green and feel firm and full, then steam the whole batch with a little salt for one of the easiest, most satisfying snacks your container garden will give you all season. Number 10. Swiss chard. Swiss chard might be the toughest leafy green you can grow, and it's exactly why a July container suits it so well. For a single plant, a 1 to 2 gallon pot at least 10 to 12 inches deep is plenty. And because chard grows more upright than bushy, you can fit several plants just 6 to 8 inches apart in the same container. Chard handles summer heat far better than spinach or lettuce, but it isn't completely immune to it. Leaves picked in the peak of a hot spell can taste noticeably more bitter and earthy than the same plant in cooler weather. And if a real heat wave settles in, moving the container into a spot with some afternoon shade for a few days brings the flavor right back and keeps the plant from stressing. Fill the pot with a rich, well-draining potting mix. Water deeply whenever the top inch of soil dries out, and this is genuinely a plant it once, harvest it for months crop. Pick the outer leaves as you need them, leave the center growing, and a single container planted now can keep producing fresh chard well into fall. Number 11. Mint. If Swiss chard proved that a tough plant can still thrive in a small pot, mint takes that idea and runs in the opposite direction. It thrives so aggressively that the container isn't really there to help it grow, it's there to keep it from taking over everything around it. For your pot, 12 inches in diameter is a solid minimum, since mint is a vigorous grower even when confined. Use a well-draining potting mix, and here's the twist most people don't expect from a plant with such a reputation for toughness. Mint's roots are actually fairly shallow and spread wide rather than deep, so it dries out faster than you'd think in July's heat. If your mint keeps wilting even though you're watering it, the pot is very likely too small or drying out between waterings faster than you're checking it. Mint in full summer sun often needs water daily, sometimes even twice on the hottest days. Once it's established, harvest it often. Snipping stems back regularly not only gives you fresh mint for the kitchen, it keeps the plant bushy and productive rather than leggy. Pinch off any flower buds too, since letting mint bloom pulls flavor out of the leaves. A container of mint planted right by the kitchen door means fresh leaves are always within reach for iced tea, a mojito, a sprinkle over fruit salad, or that finishing touch on a summer dish that suddenly tastes brighter. Stay on top of the watering, and one container will keep supplying you all season long. Number 12. Collard greens. Collards belong to the same family as cabbage and kale, but summer heat barely slows them down. Planting it in July is perfectly fine. In fact, it's one of the few brassicas that actually handles the heat well enough to grow straight through it, rather than needing to wait for cooler weather. For your container, a 5-gallon pot, at least 12 inches deep and wide, suits a single plant well, since collards develop a fairly large root system as they mature. Fill it with a rich potting mix, since garden soil compacts too easily for the roots to spread properly, and set it somewhere with a good 6 hours of sun. If you noticing ragged holes chewed through the leaves, cabbage worms are almost always the cause. Small green caterpillars that blend in disturbingly well with the leaf color. Check the undersides of leaves regularly and pick them off by hand, or use a lightweight row cover early on to keep the moths from laying eggs in the first place. Harvest by picking the outer, older leaves first and letting the center keep producing, and this plant will just keep feeding you week after week. A pot of collards simmered low and slow with a little seasoning is a southern classic for a reason, and few things taste better on a cool fall evening than a bowl you grew yourself from a single summer container. Number 13. Tomatillos. Tomatillos genuinely love the kind of heat July brings, and a container actually works in their favor here. The warmer soil around the roots pushes the plant to flower and fruit earlier than one growing in the ground. For your container, plant on at least a 5-gallon pot per plant, 12 inches deep, filled with a rich, well-draining potting mix rather than dense garden soil, which holds too much water around the roots. These plants grow tall and sprawling, so a sturdy tomato cage or a stake and ties from early on keeps the branches from collapsing under the weight of the fruit later in the season. One thing worth knowing before you start: a single tomatillo plant will flower away all season with little to show for it, since it needs a second plant nearby for the bees to cross-pollinate between them, so plan on growing at least 2 pots side by side. You'll know it's time to harvest once the papery husk turns from green to tan and starts to split slightly, and the fruit inside fills that husk out firm and snug. Pick them a little on the smaller side if you can, since the flavor turns milder and sweeter before the fruit grows large, and a firm, bright green tomatillo makes a noticeably better salsa verde than one left to yellow on the plant. Number 14. New Zealand Spinach. While regular spinach gives up the moment July's heat arrives, this one is just getting comfortable. New Zealand spinach isn't actually related to true spinach at all. It belongs to a completely different plant family, but it fills the exact same gap on your plate without ever bolting or turning bitter in the heat, which makes July one of the best times all year to get it started. For your container, a pot at least 10 inches deep and wide gives the sprawling, trailing stems room to spread. And it's best grown alone rather than sharing space, since it takes over a pot quickly once established. Fill it with a rich, well-draining potting mix and set it somewhere with a good 6 hours of sun. The one thing that catches people off guard is how slow this one is to start. The seeds have a tough outer coat and can take 2 to 3 weeks to sprout, far longer than most greens on this list, so don't assume a failed planting too early. Soaking the seeds in water for 24 hours before sowing speeds things up noticeably. Once it's established, harvest by snipping the tender tips and top few inches of each stem, and new growth fills back in within weeks. Number 15. Armenian Cucumber. Despite the name, an Armenian cucumber isn't actually a cucumber at all. It's a type of melon, closely related to cantaloupe, but it grows, tastes, and gets used in the kitchen exactly like a cucumber. Long, pale green, ribbed, and refreshingly crisp. Because it's a melon at heart, it genuinely thrives in heat that would stress a regular cucumber plant. And July is still a perfectly good time to get one started. In most zones, there's still plenty of season left for it to climb, flower, and produce before the weather turns. That heat tolerance comes with a real bonus too. This is one of the few vining fruits that essentially never turns bitter. The compound responsible for that bitter taste in regular cucumbers is naturally absent here, so even a plant that gets a little stressed still stays mild and sweet. For your container, you'll need a genuinely large pot, at least 10 to 15 gallons, since this is a vigorous, sprawling vine, paired with a sturdy trellis or fence it can climb. Set it in the sunniest spot you have. This plant wants a full 8 hours of direct sun or more to really take off. Harvest the fruit while it's still young, around a foot long, since letting it grow much larger past that only makes it seedier without adding any flavor. If this video helped you plan out your summer garden, hit subscribe, drop a like, and let me know in the comments which one you're planting first.